Hey coaches, today I have a high rep serve receive drill for you. It's not only going to improve your passing game, but it will also help your team understand different ways to get out of a tough serve receive situation. We've all had those matches where the other team just keeps finding the holes, moving our passers around, and there's not a simple solution. Most of the time we can tell our players, take a step up, drop back, move over to the side a little, and that will usually fix it. But sometimes we just need a change of scenery. A lot of times making this change is going to help your team just get a pass up to the setter so your team at least has an opportunity to earn the ball back. It's best if you plan out these changes ahead of time, that way you don't mistakenly get out of rotation or get confused on the court. That's going to make you lose points, and that's not fun. Before you start this drill, you have to do a few things. You need to write down your current serve-receive rotation, and then you also need to come up with an alternative for each rotation, like I did here. If you're like me and you run a 6-2 with your team, you're only going to need 3 options, because once you get around to that 4th rotation, you'll just start repeating with number 1. But if you run a 5-1 with your team, then you're going to have to come up with an option for each of the 6 rotations. This is one of my favorite times to use a whiteboard because I can draw it all out and then just prop it up against a chair when it comes to practice time. I hate being a bottleneck of information. A lot of the times all of the information is in the head of the head coach, and so putting it on a whiteboard for everyone to see makes things go a lot faster. This way your players can look at it for reference and your assistants can look at it for reference as well. You can also see that I used different colors. So I used blue for front row and purple for back row. That's just going to help the players make sure that they stay in rotation. In order to run this drill, we're going to have everyone who is a sub start by serving on the opposite side of the net. You can also throw in a coach to make the serves a little more aggressive. And the servers are just going to serve over the net while we learn our different serve receive rotations. I like to give my team the goal of hitting 3 over and in before they can rotate. What we're teaching them in this drill is to switch up the serve receive formation if we get stuck. For a lot of teams, we'll use that 3-point mark to tell us when we need to switch something up. You can see on my whiteboard that I have options number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is going to be most likely our best serve receive option, and that's where we are always going to start. If we don't get 3 over and in right away, then we're going to switch into option 2. Now, how your serve receive looks can vary. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. These are the serve receive patterns that I used for my last club team. You want to have your 3 strongest passers back in serve receive whenever you can. Your second option is usually going to take your number 3 passer and move them up or back, and then move your next strongest passer back into serve receive. If after we switch to our second option, we still haven't gotten 3 hits over and in, we'll switch back to option 1. It's okay if you find yourself switching back and forth often before actually getting through the rotation. The entire point of this drill is to let your team know that they have options. Once we get through our first rotation, we'll go into rotation 2 and do the same exact thing until we work our way through all 6 rotations. Depending on the skill level of your team, this can take 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes even longer, especially if serve receive is something you struggle with. Even though it eats up a lot of practice time, it's so worth doing. Also want to give your players a cue word. That way they know when to make the switch and they don't have to think about it. I like to use switch. I use switch because there's not really any other time in the match where I use that word, and it makes sense. I'd recommend not saying like pull Alyssa back or hide Ava. You don't necessarily want to be using names because that can kind of mess with the mental state of the team. Also, I like my players to be able to think for themselves. Although I can yell switch at any time, I like to assign this task to one of my players, usually my captain. One of the things that I love about this is that my players will seize that opportunity for leadership and really take control of when our team switches. A lot of the times after you teach this to your team, they'll make that switch without you even telling them. Trust your players. If they make a mistake or switch when you don't want them to, that's okay. It's a learning experience and they'll build from there. It's also really beneficial for your team to know mentally that if this isn't working, there's something else we can do. You might also find that as you go through this, your option 1 isn't actually the best option. So I know with my team, we would get to maybe rotation 5, and our second option ended up being our best option. So we would always just switch into that right away and start from there. If you plan on running this drill with your team, give this video a thumbs up. I post new drills and coaching tips regularly, so please subscribe and sign up for notifications. I'm also very open to questions, and I want to help as many coaches as I can. So if there's a skill that you are struggling with to teach your team, let me know in the comments what age you coach and what skill it is, and I can make a video for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.